going to start right away with a question?
Yeah, well, what do you mean, like, yeah, like we should act like we're,
Well,
like we're talking about regular, like how we were just talking.
you mean like people
Yeah.
who know each other?
We are people who know each other.
We are.
Yeah. It's funny, we had dinner last night, didn't we? And we,
Yes, we did.
And we did this.
We did a practice run.
We did like a practice run,
Yeah.
and it would have been cool.
I think it was better last night.
Yeah,
Yeah.
especially with Nicole Richie standing.
Nicole Richie right there, and Robert Shapiro being at the restaurant.
Talking to Nicole Richie.
Yeah, it was a sort of surreal.
You know, actually, that's a good segue. It brings me to your incredible show, movie, miniseries.
Limited series, if you want to be technical.
What's it called?
Limited series.
Whatever, but you're amazing at it. You're so good. And we are friends, and I've worked with you a few times, and I've seen you in so many things, and I think this is probably like a big sort of, it's a big deal for you, right? To play a role like this, that's this layered and whatnot. But is it like one of your proudest moments as an actor?
You know, I'm not watching it. So
right, but you did
so what I'm saying is that separate from how it's being received publicly, which has been mostly, as far as I can tell, very positive. For me, it was probably the first time where I felt like, because I always watch my work. Do you watch your work? Do you usually?
I do.
Yeah, I usually watch it, and this time I felt so protective and so kind of, I don't know, protective is the right word, of the experience of having done it.
Yeah.
That I didn't want to ruin it or sully it by picking apart my performance, which I'm liable to do. So I felt like my pride about having accomplished it, because to me, it seemed like a big opportunity for failure to play a real person.
Yeah, right.
You know, a person who's walking around, a kind of iconic looking person, a person that, you know, people have a lot of thoughts and attachments to what they thought she was.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah. I would imagine that does carry like a higher threshold of fear, really, playing somebody.
Yeah,
that
because you
existed.
think it's not something that is entirely up to me in terms of, I'm not inventing it out of whole cloth with a writer and a director. It's sort of, you know, there are facts about this person. I have footage about the way she carried herself, how she spoke. So I wanted to get it right.
All right, so now you've worked with Ryan Murphy for how long now? Like 4 years on that?
Well, I think I've done 8 or 9 different things if you count each season of Horror Story, because they're.
Oh, and you did a pilot with him?
I did a pilot for Ryan Murphy called Pretty Handsome.
Pretty Handsome.
I did Nip
Never
Tuck.
saw it.
Never saw it. Nobody did.
Nip Tuck. Very good.
Thank you.
I remember you on that.
Yeah, I had the stigmata.
Yeah, that was so
Agatha
good.
Rip.
That's right. Yeah.
Thank you.
So clearly he's a fan, and now here you are, and maybe your most sort of high-profile role yet on People vs. O.J. Simpson, playing Marcia Clark. How did? I mean, obviously, you know, you have a history with him, but how did he approach you about playing that part?
He called me on the phone and he just said, "Do you want to do this?" And then very quickly followed up with, "You don't really have a choice. You're doing it." And I think, which I was very grateful for, because if I had really taken a lot of time to think about it, I might have said no. It's a very scary prospect to think about taking on that part, just because immediately when you think of Marcia Clark, you think of the hair, you immediately think about her wardrobe, the way she spoke, the way she behaved, the things that we all thought about her, being kind of a strident, aggressive woman.
Yeah, but do you think it's scarier than playing a Siamese twin, which you also did? I mean, that's pretty scary.
That was probably truly the most challenging thing I've ever done.
Yeah.
Just
because that's the thing. I know you like. Don't you find that the more scared you are, the more
I
you
want to do it.
Want to do it.
Yes.
Right. I mean, that's kind of that's the gig.
That is true of me. I think that's true of you too, isn't it?
It definitely is. It's also true of me, which I think it is of you too. Although I think in this case it was different. That really the work itself is what's the most exciting thing about it.
Yeah.
And what happens afterwards. It's all, we don't really pay much attention to that, but I think you and I are in the same boat this time, and playing this year 2 leads in something, big roles. I've never done it. This is your biggest part.
I haven't really ever done that.
Yeah, and that's a trip, isn't it? Like being a part of like that kind of conversation and walking out of your house and people are sort of paying more attention to you than they used to.
They sure are. Yeah.
Black women don't like you.
What? No, that's idiotic. I have tried many, many cases in front of black women and won. I have a rapport with them.
The data doesn't bear that out.
Well, then your data is horseshit.
Robert, can I call you Robert?
Yeah, sure, why not?
Does anyone call you Robert?
Nobody calls me Robert.
Your mother doesn't call you Robert?
No, she calls me Bobby Ding.
What?
I don't know.
How did vinyl come to you? This was not something, I mean, was this the first, I'm gonna let you answer. How about that?
It came to me because of Boardwalk Empire.
Right.
And Boardwalk Empire came to me because of a play that I was doing in New York on Broadway.
Called?
The Motherfucker with the Hat.
Greatest. I thought you were so amazing.
Title ever
Yeah.
for a play. Best play I've ever read, contemporary play. Anyway, so Marty Scorsese and Terry Winter came and they saw it, and then that's how I got on their radar, and they asked me to do Boardwalk. And then while I was doing Boardwalk Empire, it had been around for a while. Mick Jagger came up with the idea about 20 years ago. They were going to make it into a movie. Terry was going to write the film, and Marty was going to direct it. And then things happened. I don't know. And they decided to, I guess, as Marty got involved with HBO and Terry had Boardwalk Empire, they decided to turn it into a series, and they asked me to do it.
So this was not an audition sort of situation.
It wasn't.
This was.
Yeah, it was.
Did you audition for
thank
Boardwalk
God.
Empire, or did that come to you also?
That just came to me, and that was again because of the play, and they called me in, and Terry had this idea for this character, and there was nothing written, but the way he described it, I was just sitting across from him like this, and the way he described them to me, there's something about like somebody that's that creative describing a character to you when they're really excited about the character. That's when you want to sign on to something, you know. And
So it sounds
I
like
sort of-
this had been cooking for a while, but they just hadn't found the right guy to play Ricky Finestra.
I guess so, Richie. Sarah, right?
Sarah.
Yeah.
We're doing really well.
Yeah, we're doing good.
Rock and roll! That fucking energy, man! Forget yes, fucking Emerson, Lake and Palmer. Rock and roll, man. Like the first time you heard it. It's fast, it's dirty, it smashes you over the head.
What do you think is the biggest challenge you've ever had as an actor? Was there one role? Was there one scene? Was there a project, a whole thing that you sort of felt like, I don't know how I'm going to do this?
You know, I did a play. It was a play, really, and I guess I mentioned the play because it's funny. Like this is Variety and it's movies and television and stuff, but I have to talk about the plays because I do a lot of theater in New York, as you know, as you do, and really the decisions I've made in the last sort of 5-6 years have led to some of these roles, all of these roles, really. And I did this play a few years ago called The Motherfucker with the Hat, and it was written by an incredible playwright named Stephen Guirgis, who's recently won the Pulitzer Prize last year for another play. And the play was very controversial. The title was very controversial. It sort of wasn't really welcomed with open arms in an establishment like Broadway. It got a lot of bad press before we even opened.
I remember you telling me that they were papering the house.
Yeah, they just didn't
Nobody
want us
was,
to open. They
yeah.
were papering the house. They were really not giving us a chance there.
Yeah.
And Chris Rock was in it with me, and Chris had never done a play before. And so he was terrified. First guy there at rehearsal, last guy to leave every day, worked so hard. He was terrified. I was working with an ex-girlfriend that I hadn't seen in years, and I had to work very intimately with her on this. And it was like a challenge, and I was playing a role that nobody could really see me in. So I had to read that play from beginning to end in these readings 3 separate times. Once for the playwright, who was a good friend of mine, once for the director, and once for Scott Rudin, the producer. And that was really challenging. That was like, I almost gave up after the second time I had to read that play.
Because you thought you weren't going to...
I just didn't think that they really were believing that I was getting it. And I felt so strongly that I should have played that role, that I just couldn't take the heartbreak of like of not getting it. And then I just went and I did it, and it ended up being like a great success for me. It's how I met Woody Allen, it's how I met Martin Scorsese, and it sort of turned everything around for me.
God.
What was your most sort of challenging?
I think it was playing those twins on American Horror Story on Freak Show. It was
growing the head?
It was growing the head thing was, I think, very challenging and was something we weren't sure if I was going to be able to do in time.
Yeah, but you are
I think,
good.
you know, I am dedicated.
You are dedicated.
So I was fertilizing that thing
Unbelievable.
every day. And it was just like, good morning. It's like, oh, Jesus. No, but, you know, I've got one head, one brain, and I'm right-handed, and I was playing a person who was attached to me who was left-handed and had a different mind and heart and everything than the other twin did. So it was very, also I was acting by myself all the time.
Yeah.
It's a very lonely thing, and I don't know about you, but so much for me that is pleasurable and exciting about acting is being able to relate to another actor.
Totally, yeah.
Looking into another pair of eyes, and all of a sudden it can change everything about how you thought you were going to play a scene.
Yeah.
And I didn't have that at all when I was playing those twins. It was just me acting with myself. And you know, sometimes the night before you'll be working on your lines or be thinking about the scene and you have it all down in terms of what you're going to say at least. But then somebody will be playing opposite you and it will be not what you expected. It will change everything.
Yeah,
And I didn't have any of that at all. And it was, I would think, oh, well, I don't know what she's going to do yet. It's like, well, she is you. So you need to just.
Yeah, right.
And that was.
But that has got to be maybe one of the top 3 most unique acting experiences anybody has ever played.
Yeah, I mean, I certainly, when I was a kid and I had dreams about roles I was going to play, I never thought about a conjoined twin.
Yeah.
And I can say I'm actually proud that I think we pulled it off in a way that
Absolutely.
that I don't find humiliating.
I mean, really, like, there's really nothing like that, really. I mean,
Nothing, yeah.
Maybe John Hurt in The Elephant Man.
Yeah.
Maybe Gary Oldman, where he played the dwarf in that
Yes.
movie. Do you remember that movie?
What was that?
Remember that movie?
Yes, I do.
It's the best trailer.
That is the greatest trailer of any movie. What's it
Ever.
called? What is it called? Tiptoes.
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 And Gary,
Just the trailer alone,
The
I
trailer
watched, like,
alone. Gary Oldman in the role of a lifetime. Tiptoes. Yeah. They're not going to use that.
You've been doing this a long time, right? I mean, when did you first
Yeah.
circle rep?
People don't think
right?
that.
Theater.
People think I just like fell off the
No,
Goomba
but I
tree.
mean, you were always, you know, it was like, there's Bobby Cannavale doing another great performance in a great movie.
Yeah.
There's Bobby always being great in something, always telling the truth, always being great.
Yeah, I've
But
always
there's-
been at it, but like, I guess I started in earnest really like, started auditioning when I was about 21, 22.
Did you have a real dry spell when you first started?
Oh my God. I
When-
didn't get my first job. I didn't like stop working in a bar until I was 28, and Jake, my first son, was
Yeah.
4, good to almost 4 years old. So, and I remember I was 28 years old, and all my contemporaries were working already.
Yep.
So guys that I would end up being friends with later and working with, like Ethan Hawke and Frank Whaley and
Hold on,
Josh
do you want me
Hamilton.
to pick this up for you?
Well, I'm just saying there were
I'm
my
just kidding.
contemporaries who were working at 19, 20,
Yeah.
21. Like, remember the early 90s
I
were
do.
like all about young guys, you know, and ladies.
Ladies.
You know, working at a young age. So I remember feeling really behind. But I kept at it. I mean,
What was there one role in particular where you felt like, I can relax now, I feel like I'm here to stay? Or do you always sort of carry around that feeling that
I
it could
still
all
carried
evaporate?
around like,
Yeah, me too.
like I'm not going to work again.
Me too.
Yeah. I mean, this is the first time that I feel a little bit relaxed, and I think it has to do with the fact that I just had a baby. And I know I'm coming back for season 2 for
Right.
Vinyl, and that's really the first time ever that I'm like.
They didn't ask for a season 2 on
not
Cupid
freaking
reboot
out.
that we
Whoa,
did.
remember that?
They really didn't ask
So
for that.
let's talk about that for
Yeah,
really
let's
a
do.
short
For
amount
just
of
a
time.
second, because
we
they'll
did
cut
a
it out
play
anyway.
called Cupid.
We did a play, we did a TV show.
We did a weird play,
Oh, we did a play called The Gingerbread House.
Gingerbread House, which we both liked. That was really strange.
It was really strange.
Really, really
And
strange.
hard to do.
Really hard play. We did a TV show that was a reboot of a show called Cupid.
That worked so well this first time that they wanted to do it again.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
you know what? We met. We
met.
became good friends.
Yeah.
And what about you, though?
But
When
you
did
didn't
it-
finish. But what is the part that for you that you feel like really changed everything for you?
I think the station agent. I think the station agent, because before that I had done really Third Watch.
Right,
And
Third
Third Watch was a
Watch.
big break for me because, like I said, I was a dad and I was working in a bar, and I finally like got a job that paid me more than $140 a night.
Right.
And on a good night. And so like I never went back to working in a bar after I
Right.
got the job on Third Watch. And so but after that, then I was kind of like, I wasn't really happy. Weirdly, I did a season on it and I was like, I'm not really happy here. I'm not really doing much. I felt like I'd kind of acted myself into a corner, and I got myself off the show in the second season.
Wait, what?
I know. But then I went and I did a play with Tom McCarthy, who would go on to, he directed Station Agent, he directed me in Win-Win, and then he won the Academy Award this year for
Spotlight.
I knew what it
Okay,
was.
I just wanted to make sure you knew.
And so, again, like, you know, it was just my gut telling me, this is time, I wasn't being challenged at all as an actor, and really that's always, that sort of stayed with me, like, that's what's really the most important thing to me. I guess that's why I never feel really secure, because there's always the feeling that like, this is gonna eventually, I'm not gonna enjoy this anymore, or it's gonna get old, and I'm gonna wanna do something more challenging than this. And so that feeling of never being quite feeling like I'm secure, you know.
Is
it's-
more about your appetite maybe never really
I
being
think
fully
so.
sated. Yeah.
I think so, yeah. When did you feel like, you know, you could finally relax?
I don't feel a sense of relaxation,
Yeah.
even now. And I wonder if some of that has to do with the success coming later, that there's almost that feeling of like it took so long, each thing felt like this kind of big climb, that now I feel like I worked hard to get there, and I'm really afraid that at any moment someone's just gonna go, and it's all gonna go away.
Right.
But I think the thing that really, the first job that I had where I felt like there had been a sort of shift was Studio 60 on the Sunset Strip, because it was Aaron Sorkin as the writer, and it was Matthew Perry coming right off of Friends and Bradley Whitford coming right off The West Wing, and I got this great part on this show that originally seemed sort of like a supporting part, the supporting female, and then very quickly became more than that, and it was not known to me that that was going to be. Do you have a joke or something you're wanting to say? Because I see in your face that there's
you know what
something
it is?
happening.
I'm remembering watching you on the show, and I'm remembering watching when we did Cupid. Right before we did Cupid, I was already cast in the show, and we needed to get your character, your part. And I was watching all these tapes of actresses, and it was the first time that I had any kind of like
input,
and all of a sudden, they just had these clips of you on that show, like one next to the other, just spliced together. And I just remember crying, laughing. And I think you and I went out for dinner.
We did.
Like the next night. I just said, I want to meet her because she's made me laugh so hard. And I think that's the one thing about you that I can really honestly like totally say, you're being your friend aside. Every single time you show up at anything, I feel so like, I don't know what's gonna happen, and I get chills because I feel like in such great hands, and I know that something unpredictable is about to happen, and it happens every single time with you.
That's so nice, Bobby.
And that happened the first time I saw you on that show on Studio 60, so I'm not surprised that was it.
Pay you some money later.
Yeah, cool.
It's very nice of you to say that.
So I would imagine playing Marcia Clark, aside from things like the wig, the awesome clothes, I'm sure that those help you to get into the character. I know that they do. But what's the most important thing for you to be able to get into her shoes?
I think for me, the great luck of being able to watch so much footage on her. My favorite stuff to watch was the stuff where she didn't really know she was being filmed. It was like a camera inside the hallway of the courtroom, and she'd be sort of standing in front of the courtroom before she was allowed to go in. This was very early, like preliminary hearing time. She'd be having a conversation with the person, and I could just see her sort of behaving. And she was always smiling. It was all these things that you never saw during the trial. And that was a really, really wonderful, I mean, it was the kind of thing where every day we were in the courtroom, certainly, because a lot of that stuff was lifted directly from transcripts and exact moments that we were recreating that were from the trial. So I would just, we had a wonderful woman named Kelsey who was on the set, whose job it was to bring all the archived footage to us, anything we needed or wanted to see. And so I'd have it up on my iPad, and right up into the moment they said rolling, I was watching her just any moment. And then I did this weird, very ticky thing, which is I found out what perfume she wore. And I was wearing it, and I would always just like inhale my wrist feverishly right before action. I'd throw the iPad under the table and smell the perfume and then go.
Jean Naté?
No, it was almost as bad.
Emeraude?
No, it was called Magie Noir, Lancôme Magie Noir, to me, which smelled...
Oh, Lancome's good.
It's good, but it was like the bargain basement of Macy's perfume throwouts.
Really?
It seemed to me it was just like...
Wow, she's going to love hearing
No,
you
no,
describe
she
it that
knows.
way.
I've told her. I was like, to me, it starts out really good, and as the day goes on, it becomes like a fecund, sort of weird, planty, dirty animal smell that's kind of good, but not great.
It's a good name for a perfume, actually. Fecund.
Fecund. That's going to be my perfume line I'm going to come out with.
Watching all that footage of her, so you get to see the result of what her behavior, but you really get to fill the inner life with your own ideas of what it is that's making her laugh, what it is that's making her twitch, whatever that is.
Well, that I got from her book, which I read, the Tubin book, which was obviously incredibly informative, which was what our show is based on. But yeah, that was probably the most fun part of it, was sort of filling in the blank spaces where I couldn't know for sure, but I had an idea, and I felt that I had a
You spent time with her.
I met her once, but very, very, very late into shooting, after episode 6, after the
okay.
Marsha episode.
That's probably a good idea.
I think it was smart only because I sort of came to really revere her and have such kind of admiration and respect for her that I thought, oh, I don't want to meet her. What if, that could just go really...
She got a bad deal, man.
She got a really
That was
bad
tough.
deal. And the thing about meeting her that was so wonderful is that she was everything I hoped she'd be and more. And she was so smart and so funny. I mean, so much of her was sort of asked to be left at the door when she walked in that courtroom.
Yeah,
She wasn't allowed, whereas Johnny Cochran and Shapiro, all of them, they brought their personalities to the trial.
yeah.
And they used it to their advantage, and it was smart. Marcia just didn't have that kind of capability. She was too earnest and too committed to her search for justice, and she just didn't want to get in the way of it. She sort of tried to keep herself out of it. But even now, when I talked to her about the trial, she got very emotional. All these years later, still couldn't really talk about it without getting her eyes went kind of wet. And yeah. What about you?
Ask me a question.
I'm about to. See, I was just about to. Now I don't want to. Now I want to make you suffer a little bit, uncomfortably shift around in your seat.
When I started in this business, rock and roll was defined like this. 2 Jews and a guinea recording 4 Schwarzes on a single track. Now, it's changed so much, it's not even recognizable as the thing people used to be so afraid of.
So what about you with Richie?
Yeah.
Fenestra, which I think is such a kind of sexy name.
Yeah.
Suits you.
Yeah.
And your hair. That is your hair on the
That's
show?
my hair, yeah.
That's really sexy, good hair.
Thanks.
I really love that. I mean, I like when they go back to, pre you being this sort of mogul with that very tight to the head hairdo, and then later you're all just like a Memorex ad or something.
Every now and then, my hair's crazy. Like, it's not easy, and every day it looks different.
Oh, it's
but
so
every
good.
now and then, it just bounces right. And there are some episodes in which, like, I'm walking,
And you go,
and
"Man."
on the days that it's feeling like right, that's when I
The
really
hair acting, man. Yeah.
add a notch to the walk.
Well, what did you do to prepare for all of that?
Well, I had a lot of time. I had like years. I mean, I
You didn't
think
have years,
I did.
you?
Yeah. So I was first approached about it in what's now 16.
It's 2016.
In 2012, I was first given the script.
Oh.
And we didn't shoot it for like another year and a half.
Mm-hmm.
And then there was a year after we shot the pilot before we started shooting the episodes.
Mm-hmm.
So I really had a long time. And in that time, like, the nice thing about working for HBO and then working for somebody like Scorsese and having a guy like Jagger attached to something about music is that you have access to anybody you want, because everybody wants to help out on that. And so, I had to learn how to play the guitar for like one scene, and they got me Patti Smith's guitarist, Lenny Kaye. He came to my house like 3 times a week,
Whoa.
teach me how to play the guitar.
Wow.
And then I'm hanging out with Lenny Kaye, who, aside from being one of the great guitarists and one of the greatest bands ever, it was also like a rock journalist in the early 70s, late 60s. And so the guy's memory of the scene at that time, he still lives on St. Mark's Place, was so helpful to me. Danny Goldberg, who was Led Zeppelin's publicist when he was 23 years old, and then ran, Columbia Records, and then ran Atlantic Records. He was he's our technical advisor for everything about business. And so I got to be with him, David Johansen, the lead singer of the New York Dolls. I got him around. And so I just had all
sort of
those
immersed
great
yourself in it,
resources
yeah.
that I got to immerse myself. And it's a really fun world to immerse yourself in. 18, 19 years ago when I was doing Third Watch, I was riding around in an ambulance up in Harlem with these guys. And that's like a different experience.
Yeah.
But this is a lot more fun, hanging out in rock clubs and hanging out with these guys and, reading these great books, which I already had a big interest in anyway. I was always kind of obsessed with rock and roll music, and that era in particular, which I think a lot of people our age really appreciate that time. We were born, I know I
My
was
parents
born,
were listening to that kind of music.
yeah, and even as like little kids, in 1973, I was still only 3 years old, but by 1976, I really remember the bicentennial. I really remember listening to that music. And if the 80s are like your time, which I guess was when we were teenagers,
I wasn't.
you were
you're a little older
still
than I am, so just
listening to
relax,
music
okay?
from the 70s,
Yes.
and so I was always really intrigued by that, and I think the best movies come from the 70s.
Totally.
So that's a time that I was really, really interested in. So I really got to throw myself into it. And then I was given like rein to do anything I wanted in that part. I remember Marty saying to me, "You get to do everything with this part." And I remember thinking like,
Meaning that there are
fuck.
no rules or no boundaries. You can just.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, and in the very first scene in the show, there's a voiceover in which I say, so this is my story clouded by, lost brain cells and maybe a little bit of bullshit. Clouded by lost brain cells, self-aggrandizement, and maybe a little bit of bullshit. So this guy's, this is a drug addict telling a story as he remembers it.
Right.
So I really have a lot of license to tell it any way that I want. And that was really nice. If I had done this part 15 years ago, I don't think I'd have been able to do it. It felt like all the roles I'd
But
played
do you think
leading up
knowing
to
that
it.
Martin Scorsese, what is it? Martin Scorsese?
Martin Scorsese.
Everybody says it differently.
Yeah.
You would know, him. What is he? What do you do?
I'd say Marty.
You say Marty.
Yeah.
Okay. So does Marty. I'm just going to do that because we're sitting here and I
Yeah.
feel like I can. Do you think having someone like that believe in you and say you were the only, obviously, the only person that could do this? I've been waiting for you, essentially.
Well, I didn't say that.
But I'm just saying it's very obvious that I've been waiting for you. Marty said to me, "I've been waiting for you, Bobby. I've been waiting for you." But clearly, the script had been around for a long time. The idea had been around for a long time. And then it was seeing you in that play that made them realize that you were the guy. So, but I wonder if there's a great deal of power and freedom and confidence that comes from having someone that is that extraordinary of a filmmaker say to you, anything goes here. There's nothing you can do that's wrong.
Yeah, I think so. But I also think that I would have been unprepared for it at a different time in my life. I really feel like I've put in the work and I've paid my dues.
I've got some notes, but I just...
I've done everything in this business, like from being an understudy to having
me
one
too.
like to being an extra to, I've done it all. So I feel like I've really kind of earned my way here. And it's not like, like I worked for him already when I did Boardwalk. That was,
Right.
I think, kind of my audition in a weird way. So by the time it came to shoot this, I did feel confident that I
You
felt
won an
like
Emmy for that, didn't you?
for Boardwalk Empire.
For Boardwalk Empire.
I did, yeah.
That was your second, wasn't it?
That was my second, yeah.
That's 2 Emmys.
Yeah, that feels like we said, like we planned that or something.
I didn't plan it.
We
I'm
set
just
up.
saying it.
Yeah.
I'm just saying it.
How about you? You've been nominated a bunch.
Yeah, I never won.
I know, but really, you win when you get nominated.
Yes, that's true.
It's true.
It is true. I'm totally
If you
agreeing.
think about it, right? What is it, 4 or 5 people?
Sometimes 6, I think.
Sometimes 6, whatever.
With all,
But
and especially nowadays with
you-
all the content that's on,
Oh, dude.
to have any performance be recognized.
so
is
many
good.
actors out
I
there.
know.
So for your name to even be mentioned,
I agree with you completely.